If you have a mortgage, there's a pretty good chance you're part of a quiet battle that's being fought right now over your money. Seriously, you might not even know it's happening. But today, we're going to pull back the curtain on this high-stakes showdown over the cash that's sitting in your mortgage escrow account.
So let's just get right to the heart of it with a simple question. Is your bank making a profit from the money that you set aside for your property taxes and insurance? Well, the answer to that is what this whole conflict is about.
Okay, first things first, let's do a quick refresher on what an escrow account even is. The easiest way to think about it is like a shared piggy bank for your home's biggest bills, right? Every time you make a mortgage payment, a little piece of it goes into this account, and then your lender uses that money to pay your property taxes and your insurance for you. Seems simple enough, but the real fight is over what happens to that money while it's just sitting there.
So who's in the ring for this fight? Well, in one corner, you've got the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency. We'll just call them the OCC. They're the main federal watchdog for national banks, and they want one single national rule for everybody. And in the other corner, you have state regulators and consumer advocate groups, and they are fighting to keep the local rules that they argue are there to protect homeowners.
So let's start with the OCC's proposal. What exactly is this federal regulator trying to do? What do they want to change?
This whole thing really kicked into gear late last year, back in December, when the OCC officially proposed a couple of rule changes that would totally shake up how these escrow accounts are handled by the big national banks.
And their plan is kind of a one-two punch. First, they want to give national banks complete and total authority over all the terms, the fees, everything to do with your escrow. But then comes the second part. They want to officially declare that this new federal authority overrides, or in legal terms, preempts, any and all state laws that force banks to pay you interest on that money.
So, as you can probably imagine, the states and consumer advocates are not just taking this lying down. They are pushing back, and they are pushing back hard. Let's dig into their case.
So the opposition's argument really boils down to this. They're saying the OCC is totally overstepping its legal authority and just ignoring years of court decisions. They believe this whole rule change is designed for one reason, to help big national banks make more money at your expense. They also argue it makes the true cost of a mortgage harder to see and gives those big banks an unfair advantage over smaller, state-chartered banks.
And just listen to how Brandon Milhorn, who's the head of the Conference of State Bank Supervisors, puts it. He says this would essentially wipe out 50 years of state laws, half a century of rules that were designed specifically to protect consumers.
And this quote from Carolyn Carter over at the National Consumer Law Center, wow, it really frames it in a way that hits home. She calls it a power grab that lets banks charge a hidden back-end fee simply by keeping the interest that your money is earning for them.
Okay, let's cut through all the regulatory jargon. Why should you actually care about any of this? What does this fight really mean for your wallet?
Well, the answer really starts with this number right here, 12. That's how many states right now have laws on the books that protect homeowners by forcing banks to pay interest on these escrow accounts.
And here they are. So if you live in California, New York, Maryland, or any of these other states, your local government has basically said, hey banks, you don't get a free, interest-free loan using your customers' money. The OCC's proposal? It could just erase that protection if you happen to have your mortgage with a national bank.
And look, this is not a small issue. We're talking about roughly 30% of the entire nation's mortgages. All of them are in these 12 states. That means millions of homeowners could suddenly lose out on the interest that their money is earning for them right now.
But if we zoom out for a second, this entire fight over escrow accounts, it's really just one battle in a much larger and, frankly, a classic American debate.
The whole legal argument really hinges on this one concept, federal preemption. Now, it sounds complicated, but the idea is actually pretty simple. It's a doctrine that says when a state law and a federal law are in conflict, the federal law wins. It supersedes the state law. And the OCC is arguing its new rules should preempt all 12 of those state laws.
So this isn't just about escrow interest, you see. It's a fundamental question of power. Is it better to have one uniform federal standard that's, simpler for big banks to follow across the country? Or should individual states have the right to create their own, maybe even stronger protections for their own citizens?
And that leaves all of us with the final, really critical question. When it comes down to the money you've set aside for your home, who do you think should be writing the rules? Should it be your state or should it be the federal government? Because the answer to that question is going to decide who gets to keep the interest on billions and billions of dollars in escrow accounts all across the country.